Hiya, Georgie.
No. Hi. You should have freaking warned me. Oh my god, David.
Hello, everyone. This is David.
This is Salome.
And welcome to Something Old, Something New, the podcast where we choose two films, one old, one new, that have something in common. What that is depends on the film. And in this case, we've got a miniseries and two movies. We are tackling It, the 1999 miniseries directed by Tommy Lee Wallace and starring Tim Curry as Pennywise, and the two It films released in 2017 and 2019, both directed by Andy Muschietti. And we're just going to talk about comparing and contrasting them in terms of how scary they are, also the cast, and not to mention the clown itself. So, to begin with, the miniseries and the two movies, Salome, do you have a preference?
Well,
She's still upset by that.
yes, I am. I do have a preference. It's kind of hard because, like we grew up knowing Pennywise, like in Tim Curry's, rendition of it.
Yep, in the miniseries.
In the miniseries, yeah. So, like, it's so iconic. And I remember watching it when I was a kid and then rewatching it as a teenager. And because I do have a huge fear of clowns, it did scare me either way. But once we watched I guess I'll call them newer versions, my preference is the 2017, 2019 version for sure.
Yeah, It and It Chapter 2, respectively.
Yes, but we've talked about this before. Like, the reasoning is, like, it's not to say that the miniseries version is shittier or anything. It's just, it's different for the circumstances that it had when it was made. But for me, the new movies are by far more superior.
Yeah. And let's just go into that, where the advantage that the two movies have is that, number one, that in the structure of the novel, and this is one of those where when comparing and contrasting the novel with the miniseries and the books, is that in the novel it goes back and forth between the past and the present, and that's what the miniseries does, especially with the first half. That's definitely as they introduce the characters as
adults, right? Yeah. Actually, we do see them as adults first before seeing them as children.
Yeah,
right?
and then you would go back into the past and see. Well, as the structure of the miniseries, it would be like you would see the story from the adult, and then you would cut to them as a child, and it's like it's Mike contacting each member of the Losers Club, letting them know, hey, it is back. You got to come back, and just to let everyone know what the plot of It is, and it's the same plot for both the miniseries and the two films, and that is there is this terrorizing presence in the town of Derry, Maine, who usually takes the form of a clown who is murdering, killing the citizens of Derry, in particular children, and it comes to 7 people, in this case kids, in the 50s in the book, or 1960 in the miniseries, and in the film adaptations 1989, to defeat it, and then fast forward 27 years later, where they come back as adults, where they think they've killed it, but they truly haven't. That it's back, and it's still on the run. It's still killing people. The advantage that the movies have is that, number one, they're both R-rated. So they're definitely allowed,
films, right?
Yeah, they're definitely allowed to have more, gore and blood, physical cursing.
Yeah.
Able to touch more, get more into like the touchier subjects of the book when it comes to parental abuse, when it comes to the bullying, all those aspects of it. While the miniseries, it's because bear in mind it's ABC. Oh boy, it's ABC. And they have it there, and it's more of a PG-13, where they'll have a scene of where Pennywise is like, I'm going to get you, and he bares his teeth, and then it's like, and it's like maybe a close-up on the teeth, but then it cuts away from seeing it.
It doesn't really show the quote-unquote aftermath of the attack.
Yeah.
Or doesn't show the attack itself, which I feel, but again, I mean, it makes sense because, one, it was a made-for-TV movie, right?
Yeah, it's a miniseries.
It's a miniseries. I'm just going to call it movie, but like you guys know what I mean. Yeah. So it's a made-for-TV movie. It was rated PG-13. Essentially. And it was done in the 90s? 1990. So it's like, at that time, there's only so much that they were willing to show on TV. And, I mean, so, like, they're not going to really show, like, kids. And I'm gonna a specific scene, like the Georgie scene.
Oh, yes.
It's like, in the miniseries, they didn't really show the attack. They showed like the exact same thing that you just mentioned right now, where they did a close up of the teeth, and it's like and then it cuts right there. Ow, hit my elbow.
It fades to the. What happens is the camera moves in on Pennywise's mouth as if you're being sucked into his mouth, and then while that's being done, it then cuts to a shot of a camera of a God's point of view moving down onto the grave of Georgie when you're seeing the funeral,
like in his funeral,
his little coffin.
Which again for a made for TV movie, good shot. I like that. You know, like whatever. You know, we saw the aftermath. Like, okay, the kid died. That he did not survive that attack. Now in the movie version, the 2017 version, it was shown, and it was very effectively shown. And honestly, it was one of my favorite shots of a child being killed I've seen in a movie. I've seen in a movie, and I say that because, like, I'm not gonna lie, and I know there's a lot of people out there that cringe when a child is killed in a movie. It's one thing when it's an adult or a teenager, even, but when it's a child, an innocent child, it hits you a different way, right? So in this way, like in this movie, like you can see, which we'll talk about the interpretations of Pennywise in a bit, with Bill Skarsgård and Tim Curry's, but in this one, like, the way that he was able to effectively lure Georgie in, and then you actually see his arm get bitten off, and he like is trying to crawl away from the what do you call that thing on the side?
Sewer? From the drain pipe,
or whatever. And he's crawling away, and the what do you call it? Bird view shot or whatever. No, what term
we got from a God's point of view, where then you see the arm like stretching out the hand and grabbing him by his leg and pulling him back under the storm drain. Yeah.
Before that part, actually, what I loved was the fact that you see the kid crawling away and there's blood around him
and crying. Yeah.
And crying, exactly. So it's more effective. It really sets the tone of the film and how dangerous Pennywise is.
Yeah.
Which I don't think was effectively shown in the miniseries. But you know, that's just yeah.
I can definitely tell you that I do prefer the two theatrically released films, and I just want to get that out of the way in terms of the budgetary issues and in regards to how much splatter that you could show in the miniseries and all that. We're going to put that all aside because, in my opinion, it's a little bit unfair to compare the three, the miniseries versus the two films.
Because the miniseries, like, what was the budget?
It's a very, very small budget.
The
thing also is that the miniseries is that it was a 3-hour miniseries split into two parts. You see the one, and then the next week you have to tune in to see what happens next. But the two movies, it's combined, and not to mention the fact that there is a potential, I believe, 6 or 6.5 hour cut that the director Andy Muschietti has planned. Probably going to release that for Blu-ray, digital release and such. That combined, both films, it's 5 hours. So 3 hours versus 5, you get those 2 extra hours to be able to spend more time with the Losers Club as children and as adults. They definitely have more of an advantage in terms of the time. The other thing is that, when you compare the scares in both films, and that's also, we have to go into Pennywise and how it's portrayed, how Tim Curry portrays Pennywise and how Bill Skarsgård portrays Pennywise. As a kid, I was terrified of Pennywise. In particular, the stuff that terrified me was more about the baring of the teeth and showing the red, yellow eyes. And that's really creepy and unsettling. But the thing that I noticed when watching the miniseries, and that may have to do with the limitations of the miniseries, is that they kept cutting to the same thing over and over again. It would show like here's a kid all alone, and then something happens, and then Tim Curry shows up, and he's like, I'm scary. Then he shows the teeth and the yellow eyes, and then it
zooms into his teeth,
or it fades away, or you just see where he's like, he scares them, and then they run away, and he just stands there, and then he makes a quip, as opposed to how the 2017-2019 It films. You see Bill Skarsgård lunge at them and go after them. He is more, in his portrayal, it's more animalistic.
Yeah, and that was done on purpose. Like Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise in the movies, he wanted the approach of showing him more animalistic, more of like he wanted to show more instinctive. Like, he wanted to keep him, which is funny to say because I think Pennywise, especially in the new movies, he's such a complex character, but he's very simple because he only has one goal in mind, and you can tell what his one goal in mind is, which is food.
Yeah.
So it's like, I really do love his approach so much because I feel like showing that animalistic approach to it, like, you can see him that he's an animal getting ready to pounce, but he has to be, keep his composure because he has to lure the children in, because if he does it too soon, he's going to lose his meal. But then you see him drooling, and you see him kind of like I don't even think he really did this, but you can just like feel that like he's kind of like jittery, like he wants it to happen already.
Yeah,
it is so freaking good. Like,
and the drooling itself, bear in mind, that was unintentional because of the makeup and those dentures, the teeth they were put in, that it would cause for him to drool.
Yeah,
and so they just added it in as if he was like so hungry he can't wait to eat.
And also, like, not only that part was unintentional, but a part that kind of added to it was the smile. Like, Bill Skarsgård has a very amazing way of being able to control his body, especially his face. So it's like that evil smile that Pennywise does, like that's something that Bill Skarsgård like actually kind of won the director and the casting directors over.
Yeah,
is being able to do that weird smile with his lip. It kind of like protrudes a little bit.
Since he was able to do that as a child.
Yes, as a child, and also that whole eye thing, which you'll talk about in a bit. But
yes, like, the lazy eye. That what happens is Bill's able to do this trick where his one eye moves to the left or to the right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's incredibly creepy as well when it comes to that.
Yeah, because I know in the very beginning, the director mentioned to Bill that he wanted to digitally do that to the character, because that's something that he envisioned Pennywise able to do, to kind of add on to the whole like mystic element to it or something like that. And he told Bill about that, and he's like, wait, why do you have to digitally alter that? Like, I can do it by myself. And he showed the director that. So it was like, oh my God, what are the chances that I wanted Pennywise to be able to do this, and the guy that we hired to do can actually do it on his own. So it kind of adds on to the character of Pennywise, which I felt was missing in the miniseries. Not to Tim Curry's fault at all, because I feel that he holds up as Pennywise as well in the miniseries, but there's such a much deeper element to the new movies that I appreciate, that I feel kind of because of the structure that the miniseries did. I think the miniseries was trying to be more true to the structure that the book had.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's completely understandable. But I feel it works better in a book than it does as a film if it's not done right, or with, again, going back to the quote-unquote restrictions the miniseries had when it comes to being a made-for-TV movie, the rating and all that stuff. So I kind of get it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like when it comes to how Tim Curry portrays the Pennywise, it's like because bear in mind that the creation is millions and millions of years old. That it's established, and bear in mind this is one of those where based it off of the if specifically It Chapter 2.
Because I haven't read the books. They didn't show that in the movie. They didn't show that in the miniseries.
No,
at all.
In miniseries, it's more of a. Here's this evil entity thing that's been around for, oh gosh, who knows how long. Yeah. And they don't explain the origin of it. But with It Chapter 2, they do delve into that in terms of a hallucination and Mike's dabblings with the local Native American tribe and their history dealing with the creature It. That what you get this sense of is that how Tim Curry portrays Pennywise, he portrays him more like as if he was the Joker, more as of a clown. Where the funny thing is that if people know their Batman history, they would know that if Jack Nicholson was going to turn down for the role of the Joker, it was going to go to Tim Curry. Not only that, but Tim Curry was the original voice as the Joker for the anime series until Mark Hamill took over. So when I'm watching Pennywise in it, especially nowadays, I'm not scared, but my reaction is more of, one, this is most likely how he was going to portray the Joker. And two, it's more of an enjoyment of the actor of, oh, I love Tim Curry. Oh, look, he's having a great time and all the, kiss me, a fat boy and all that. It's really funny, but it's not scary.
Well, I mean, I will disagree in the sense that, again, for the 90s, I feel that the way the clown was portrayed was scary for its time. So, but if you tried to portray Pennywise like Tim Curry's interpretation nowadays, it would not work. You have to change it because, as time goes on, movies change, the horror movies change, and what is considered scary is not, always relevant depending on the decade or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, you are right in the sense that, like, at least in the new movies, it is a lot more scary. But because of the technological achievements that we have made in the movie industry,
yes,
that they were able to do certain things that the miniseries was not able to do.
Yeah.
To add on to that element of, like evil or scary or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Because of 1990 through 2017, that's 27 years. And of course, we've made advancements in makeup. We've made advancements in visual effects. In this case, more computer-generated imagery. So it's one of those where, like, and also let's take this into consideration, aspect ratio. And that is because the miniseries is made for TV, that it's shot in Academy ratio or full screen, while the two It films were filmed in scope, which is 2.35 or 2.40, one of those two aspect ratios. So it's widescreen. So
does that mean more? Or?
Oh, that means more of you get more of a frame on there. So what would happen is that in the miniseries, and this is also very integral in terms of how they portray Pennywise, and that is in the miniseries, he just pops up and goes, "Haha, I'm Pennywise, I'm scary." But in the movies, it feels like around every corner, and this is what the director Andy Muschietti would do, is that he would have Pennywise pop up in almost every little frame of the of each scene, or would pop up, like, for example,
he was referenced in one way or another.
Yeah, like for example, when they're tending to Ben being marked with the knife by one of the bullies.
Yeah.
If you look behind them on the mural, you don't see him, but then suddenly you see Pennywise.
Yeah, that was a good one. I remember you had to point that out to me because I did not catch it. So, like, if you guys haven't seen Chapter 1, or you've already seen Chapter 1, go back and rewatch it, because there's a whole bunch of cute, I don't want to say cute, actually, that's not the right word, but there's a lot of nice Easter eggs in there, like references of Pennywise that he's lurking at every corner.
Yep.
Which, again, is not a feeling we got with a miniseries, which is fine. I mean, like, I get it, but this one, it was like Doom was everywhere. Like, it's just like, you're being watched, you're being followed, no matter where you go. And in the miniseries, it was like, oh, I'll show up when I show up.
Yeah.
You'll be scared in the meantime, but you won't. I'm not going to be there. But with the new movies, I'm always there.
Yeah. It's that sense of dread that at any moment, Pennywise will be there and pop up anytime. And it's not to mention the fact that how he would also film it is that he would use, like, for example, there's sometimes there's a shuddering effect where you'll see, Pennywise's face. This is mainly used in Chapter 1. I think you do see a bit of it in Chapter 2 with the face. Oh, no, not the projector scene in particular, but how his face would jitter back and forth. What that is this is an effect that was primarily used in great effect in Adrian Lyne's Jacob's Ladder, where this is what the effect would be. The actor would shake his head, and that it would be, recorded at a slow frame rate. And what happened is that when they would play back, it would result in this fast motion. So this crazy effect. You can also see that in,
I've seen that in a lot of horror films, actually,
Like in particular, Willie Malone's films, such as, his remake of House on Haunted Hill.
Wasn't that also on Silent Hill, if I'm not mistaken? Anyways.
It very well could have been, but you do see that, and it is used in this one. Now, whether they did that, as I stated, where they would film it they would record it at a slow frame rate and then play it back, and it would be a fast motion. I don't know whether they did that or not, or CGI, but using that idea. Or another thing that they would do is they would use Dutch angles, which we go into film grammar a little bit.
Film grammar up the day. Dun, dun.
So what a Dutch angle is, it's when you're setting up the camera at an angle. So to basically, here's one idea of it. Like, imagine two characters standing next to each other, and they're standing in a grass plain land, like flat as possible, right? There they are, just standing there. But then imagine if suddenly the frame moves, and now it looks like they're up a hill. That's a Dutch angle. Where what it does is with a Dutch angle, which is especially used to great effect in the 1949-1950 classic The Third Man, Carol Reed's The Third Man, that it creates this sense of unease, of doubt, of there is something amiss in this world. So how it's used in It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, when the Dutch angles are used, that, like, for example, there'll be a scene where, Beverly has got the postcard, it's provided by Ben, but she thinks that it's Bill, but she's really moved by it, and she's in the tub, and then suddenly you hear these weird noises, and the soundtrack moves, but then she gets up, and then the camera then goes to that angle. Mm-hmm. So it creates that you create that unease, especially since Pennywise, it is this interdimensional being. And how whenever he's around, he's able to manipulate the surroundings, and you're thinking you're seeing things that aren't there. Mm-hmm. And that's how he's able to scare you. So by the filmmaking, whether it's through frames, how you compose your frame, how you do your cuts, your sound design, that's how you're able to create that world. And it's used in greater effect in the movies as opposed to the miniseries.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I never really noticed the change in framing or like... The one thing that you've taught me, like, also, lately I've been paying attention a lot to filters, like we talked about in our last podcast. But,
yes.
So I was paying attention a lot to the filters during this time to kind of setting the mood of the scene. I did notice, which I felt they used brilliantly, like the filters and stuff, but I didn't notice how impactful the framing, like, of, the scenes were. And, like, when you pointed that out to me, and I was like, holy shit, like, that is true. Like, I didn't realize how much it added to that eerie factor of like, oh my God, something's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Something is wrong. Pennywise is here. Mm-hmm. We don't know where he's at, but he's here, and it kind of adds to that whole suspense to it all. And did they use that in the miniseries? Or like, I don't, or not as effectively because like, I can't really remember having that feeling.
What they would do is, for the most part, is how Tommy Lee Wallace would shoot the film is very a locked camera, where there isn't a lot of movement with the camera. Mm-hmm. You don't get a lot of crazy angles or Dutch angles or cuts or what have you. That it's pretty straightforward, where you would have Pennywise in the center of the frame popping up, that sort of thing. And it ultimately leads to the film, even though it does have memorable like locations, such like in my opinion, the Pennywise's lair in both the miniseries and the films are both effective.
Very.
But that being said, the miniseries as how it's shot is more boring and flat as opposed to how Manny Muschietti films the lair, or just films in general. There's more excitement in the frame. There's more dread. There's more unease, especially that wide frame that wide framing of the characters definitely adds to it.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's so much as a flaw in the design of the lair or anything. I think it's just of how it was used.
Because, how it was shot. Yeah.
How it was not so much how it was shot, but also in the fact that we got more time in the lair with the new movies. Mm-hmm. We got more time to show that this isn't just any lair. Like it's kind of like a portal to a whole bunch of different areas. You know, like in a way. Mm-hmm. Like when we were in there, we what's her name? Beverly got stuck in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Like when she went to some certain cave within there. I can't remember.
Yeah, this is chapter 2.
Chapter 2, yeah, in chapter 2. And I thought this was brilliant. So like they're all in the same layer, but they kind of go in their little separate, like, I don't want to call them holes, but I'll call them caves. And Beverly got stuck in the bathroom. Ben got stuck in
what happened was that he went back in how Pennywise was trying to scare him was he sent him back to the clubhouse.
The clubhouse, yeah. And who was Eddie? No, he didn't get stuck in there. Who was it? Someone else got stuck somewhere.
Well, then Eddie and Richie.
What's his name? Bill.
Well, Bill got in the water. Yeah,
got into the water and got stuck under his basement or whatever. Mm-hmm. But also, it kind of did add to the fact that his lair is connected to the whole city. Mm-hmm. Again, sewer system. Yeah. So it's like, but even though we kind of knew that in the miniseries, they didn't stay in the lair long enough to give us that story. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay, they're in his lair. Cool. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like it's somewhere else, again, not under the city. And they kind of made a point in that in the new movies where like, hey, this is under the city. This has been here for how long? And then Mike is like, for millions of years. Like, so it's been here for a long time. And in the miniseries, if it was talked about, I don't remember it. Yeah. And I think that's the sad part because, again, like, I do enjoy the miniseries purely because of Tim Curry, but it kind of has this nostalgic feeling of like, this is one of the classics. So it's like, I do enjoy it, and I'm not going to shit on it because of that. Because, again, the approaches were so different with the actors of Pennywise. Like you said, Tim Curry, like, it seemed that his inspiration was what he was or wanted to do with the Joker, which is actually kind of like a cute link with what Bill Skarsgård did with the movies, because one of his inspiration was The Dark Knight. And I'm guessing the Joker, Heath Ledger's the Joker in that film, like that was one of his big inspirations. But I don't know, it kind of just, I forgot my train of thought, but like, I have mixed feelings on all that stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of which, of what you have mixed feelings about, and I remember this in particular, how the Losers Club and how they're portrayed, and how the link between the child actors and the adult actors. And bear in mind that I've said this before to Salome, but I believe that we're in a golden age of child actors that are just Stranger Things in particular, or we got Jacob Tremblay from Room, who should have been nominated not as supporting, because they're trying to campaign him as supporting. No, he's a lead. Get nominated as best actor in a leading role. That we're in that golden age, and so the kids in the two movies are just fantastic, and their chemistry together is just wonderful.
Yeah, but you know what I think it is though is like, one, I think these kids are very talented, but also it's because of the material that they're being given now. In the 90s, I don't feel that kids were being portrayed as humans. Yeah, if that makes any sense. But like,
more like an idea of kids instead of feeling like kids.
The generic kid, like, kids care about just these certain little like generic things, but they don't really touch base upon what we're going to talk about in a bit, which I'm not going to mention right now. But like, so talking about the new movies, the reason why these kids shine so much is because they are portrayed as humans who happen to be children. Yeah. And not even children. It's like they're coming of age. They're 12, 13 years old. And 12 and 13-year-olds usually don't speak like, gee willikers or blah. Like, no, these kids curse. They tell like the jokes of like your mom or whatever. So it's a little bit more realistic and you get more of the reason of what they're driven to as human beings, of like their backstory, their home lives, that they're not just going through the motions with what's happening at home. It's like, it's actually affecting them. They know what's going on. They are aware of what's happening. It's not happening to them. It's not just happening to them, but they know. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it, but like that, I think that's one big reason why the child actors nowadays are so much better, is because of the source material they're given. Yeah. Because kids are now finally being portrayed for who they are. Yeah. Not just children.
And not to mention, like, when it comes to the kids, like, you really do feel the plights and the horror that faces the lives of Bill, Beverly, Eddie, Richie, Mike, Ben, and Stan. That you all feel that from them. And in the miniseries, and which features a young Seth Green. How about that?
I actually did like him in the movie.
Yeah, but it's like watching it. It's more. It felt more like because bear in mind, once again, how it's structured, and that is we don't get as much time with the kids in the miniseries as we do in these two movies, and because of that, it does feel a bit of a disconnect between the adult actors and the child actors, where I am thinking of the adult cast in the miniseries, and I don't think, in my opinion, there is one adult actor that I can point to and go, oh, I believe that adult actor was that kid.
Who?
Any of them. I don't buy any of them, that they were that kid.
Oh, I thought you were saying that there was only one.
No, there wasn't one. Not one.
Honestly, that is true. And that's one reason why I was so happy that they structured the new films the way they did. Because in the miniseries, like, we jumped back and forth so much between kid and adult that we didn't have time to sympathize with either of them. And like when things started happening, it's like, okay, we get it. They're, they were kids and this happened to them, but like, bitch, why aren't you running away? I want to fucking run away. I'm like, I'm going to Australia. Fuck you guys. Like, no. But so when it happened in the new movie is because they were broken up, that we had, 2 hours and 13 minutes or 14 minutes in the first chapter of purely the kids and their story, what they're going through, what happened in their home lives and what their feelings, their struggles or whatever, that by the time they were adults, and by the way, the casting choices, like you were saying, were so brilliant. Yeah. So brilliant that we were able to sympathize and understand them as adults of, oh, they are this way because of, we had enough time with the kids to see the small traits that, went with them as they became adults.
Yeah. I mean, in particular for the two It films, I have to give a shout out to, for me, the best casting was with Jack Dylan Grazer and James Renson, who both played Eddie. that I was convinced that watching the performances, I was thinking that with Jack Dylan Grazer, what they did was they put him in a DeLorean with a flux capacitor. They maybe it was just a time machine that was able to age him, and they were able to age him, 27, 28 years later, and now he's renamed James Ranson because. I mean, a big shout out to both of them. Where one, like their performances, Eddie
amazing.
Great, but James was so. I mean, it felt like he was him. That he got it down. Not only do they look so similar, but the mannerisms.
Oh my God! I remember, I was just in awe when I was watching him because, there's these small things that Eddie does in the first chapter, as a kid, the actor playing Eddie, that he does that. The actor, I forgot his name.
Jack Dylan Grazer and James Ranson.
Yeah, what he did as an adult, portraying the small kid as an adult. I was like, okay, there's so many layers there as an actor that I can't even deal with, but it's so freaking amazing. Yeah, it's so freaking good.
Yeah, because the other factor is, look at it this way: that the idea in both the miniseries and in the two movies is that when you leave Derry, you forget about everything that's happened to you there. And so for them, it's like the thing about James Ranson, the difficulty in his performance is not only, okay, I need to get the mannerisms of Eddie down, but I also have to remember that Eddie is remembering all these things and everything is hitting him again. So not only is he, as the characters are all reliving those experiences and those traumatic events caused by it, that he is going through that journey as well. It's a tough, juggling act, and the other actors do a very good job of it. But if I had to choose, James Ranson was the best.
He was the VP of it, yeah, for sure. Bill Hader did an amazing job portraying his character as an adult too, I think.
Oh yeah, with him and Finn Wolfhard, I believe.
Yeah, they're so cute. If you guys haven't seen interviews of both of them together, it's just fucking cute. I love it. Just definitely watch them. But I feel that Bill Hader's performance was really, really good as well to portray his character. The other ones, Jessica Chastain, she did a great job because she looks a lot like the actress as well.
Although I'd argue she looks maybe a little bit like the actress, the other actress, Sophia Lillis, who was just a revelation in the first film. I was like, oh, she is going to have a big career. She was so good.
She's very mesmerizing. There's something about her eyes that I feel that she's going to be able to really use that to her advantage when she gets older as an actress.
She reminds me of Amy Adams in terms of how she looks. Yeah.
She has it's kind of rare that I don't see this much in child actors until they're teenagers or adult. No, she was a teenager by that point, I guess. But the way with her eyes, she's able to portray this innocent sincerity that as this child went through this trauma that we'll get to in a bit, that but able to keep that childlike sincerity and love. It's so interesting to me that I can't wait to see what she does when she's an adult. Yeah. How she can be able to use that when it comes to now pain in her and anger. Her eyes, just like Amy Adams, I think both of them have these eyes that you can just they just can't stop staring into.
Striking.
Yeah, they're so striking. Not so much even in color, but it's just emotion wise. I don't know. I love it so much.
And I mean, I have to, because we're touching upon acting, I have to go to the miniseries and the thing is, when it comes to the acting, is that there's a big chunk of cheese in the acting. In particular, for me, the most egregious example of that is in the casting of Beverly's, in the book and in the films, it's her husband, but in this miniseries, it's her boyfriend, and it's just a big chunk of 80s cheese where it felt like while watching it that I was it reminded me of this video game called Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, which is a really awful game that I believe was released for the 3DO. It's one of those pick or choose adventure games, and it reminded me of that type of cheesy acting that he was doing, where I didn't believe for a second that he was this it was more like the cheesy abusive boyfriend husband, as opposed to the movie where it felt more real. It felt more intense and scary.
Not only that, very manipulative, because in the miniseries, you have no idea. When that character came up, I rolled my eyes real quick. I'm like, okay, who, because he was being a dick to her in front of other people. And I was like, don't tell me that no one has called out this mofo. Like, do not tell me, like, because someone would have kicked his ass already. Mm-hmm. Like, that is, like, no shadow of a doubt. His ass would have been fucking kicked. Yeah. But in the way that he was portrayed in the new movie, and we didn't see him much like we did in the miniseries, because I think the miniseries he had
just one scene.
He only had one scene in the new movies, but in the miniseries he had two or three. But 2 or 3 that was longer, so we were able to see him for longer, which I kind of appreciated what they were trying to do in the miniseries. I get it. If it was done in the 80s, I would have been okay with it. But even though it was done in the early 90s, that's why I was like, you don't have room for it anymore. But anyways, in the new movie, like, for a second I was like, oh, they're going in a different approach, because Beverly, the character Beverly, she gets up, she gets a phone call, and she's getting things ready, and she runs into him, and he's like, babe, what happened? You know, he's kind of getting out of the sleepy state. He's like, it's okay, sit down. What's going on? And it's all kind, but then suddenly there's that turn when she gets up and he grabs her hand. Yeah. And then he's like, you know what I don't appreciate? When you're lied to me. Yeah. And then it's like, oh shit. So it becomes that whole menacing thing, and I thought it was amazing to now talk about the trauma that children went through, that character ends up marrying what she ran away from. Yep. You know, and it's like, and showing, like, also the dad in the miniseries was so much more sinister, like, in a slow way. Mm-hmm. Like, I think in the miniseries, he was shown more physical, like, he runs and he throws things or whatever. He's more fast in his... Yeah,
but it goes into almost unintentional comedy.
It does. Like, he's more physical about it, which, I mean, whatever. But in the new movie, the trauma and the people who hurt people, besides the bullies, because they're kids, they're more slow in their approach. And I mean that in a good way. Mm-hmm. It builds up. So it's like the dad, he kind of like, he built up to the, what's that word? It's not trauma. Builds up to the abuse, I should say, just like her husband did. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like... And
that's why it's not needed. It's only that one scene, because we already have gotten it with the father.
Yeah, so I feel like they added certain things that weren't necessary in the miniseries, but it had to be added because of the structure that they did in. So because we didn't get enough time with any of the characters to honestly give a shit about them, because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't give a shit about them as adults. As kids, it's one thing. I still sympathize with children. It sucks that they're going through that experience. But as adults, I don't give a shit. Just run away. Fuck you. Just call the police, call the FBI, tell national news or whatever. Tell them that in Maine. Why does everything happen in Maine? But anyways, like...
Well, Stephen King.
Stephen King, everything's in Maine. But like...
Yeah, and speaking of which is a connection, because, you know, Stephen King, this is based off of Stephen King's book, that let's also bear this in mind, that the original person who was going to direct the miniseries was George Romero. Yeah. Who, as we talked about in our third episode of Creepshow and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, there's going to be a potential another collaboration between the two. And the other original idea was it was going to be, I believe, a 4-part, 8-hour miniseries. But that all fell apart, became a 2-part, 3-hour miniseries, and George Romero left the project, was replaced by Tommy Lee Wallace.
Which makes me wonder how it was going to be then, because if it was broken down into 4 series, like, would we have gotten a chance to sympathize with the characters more, you know, and actually like, would have created a completely different thing. But I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, and the other thing is that I had to bring up in terms of the structure. And that is one of the, because in the film, in the second part, often criticized against Bill, who became a successful horror writer, and the criticism lobbied against him is that his endings are terrible. And of course, Stephen King has a cameo in the film, and he says the same thing to him. It is a meta commentary on Stephen King, where, you know, he gets a lot of flack for that. But I want to stress that to something else, and that is in it, the criticism towards the book, and then in the miniseries, and also in regards to the recent film, is that the second part of the story, mainly focusing on the adults, is not as interesting as the first.
And I disagree with the new films, but okay.
I mean, with the new films, I still prefer Chapter 1 over Chapter 2, but I definitely do get that sense, especially in the miniseries, because the one issue that comes across, and this is a criticism lobbied against the second film, is that they go on a fetch quest, or it kind of reminds me, because I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan, where it's like, okay, we got to go and take care of this, so you got to go get this pendant, or you have to go get this to that, and once you get it, you could be able to challenge Ganondorf. Oh, wait a minute, this happened. Now you got to collect more stuff. So in this way, it's like you guys... Potter. Yeah, you got to get the Horcruxes. You got to get these things. It's that whole thing of this venture quest. Essentially, you end up feeling like it's repetitive in terms of the structure of the story. And that is a kid, and this is also towards the miniseries and the first film. And that is kids alone. Here comes Pennywise. Another kid's alone. Here comes Pennywise. And for the miniseries, it felt like a slog. That it was just boring. But in the movies, I was there from beginning to end. How did you feel when it came to that?
Well, the thing is, it's like I don't want to say that I was bored with the miniseries, but at the same time, I can't disagree with you. It's again, I have such mixed feelings because like Pennywise, like the Tim Curry version, it's so iconic in our pop culture that I think it's. Now, every time we talk about it, it comes from a nostalgic point of view. So it's like, you can't help but to love it. But rewatching the movies, like, I kind of, it was getting hard for me to sit through it a little bit. Because it's like, okay, move it along now. Like, okay, we get it. But the only reason I kept thinking that is because I didn't give a shit about the characters. Because, again, it goes back to the same thing I said in the beginning. We weren't given enough time to care. And it's like with the new movies, like it felt more quick paced because it's like you gave us one full movie with just the children. We didn't see any flash forwards or anything. It's just purely the children. We're getting to know them. We're getting to know their home lives. We're getting to know what drives them, what scares them, what fears they have, what traumas are they dealing with. And we see ourselves in them. We are able to connect with them at a level like as adults we'll be like, oh, as kids maybe we felt that way too, whatever. So when we got to the new movie that we just saw this past weekend, that we saw, we are able to still connect with them, being like, oh, as adults, how do we deal with our own trauma? So now with the miniseries, it didn't give me that. So it's kind of hard. I don't know what to say about it because it's like, damn it, mini series version. Like, I get it.
I wonder what the other thought you're thinking of is. Like, it's so funny that we're saying we didn't give enough time to the characters, and yet the miniseries was 3 hours long. And I want to point this out: 3 hours. Where if you take that and say Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring, and not the extended edition, which is I believe 3 hours and 15-20 minutes, just a theatrical, which is less than 3 hours. That gave you a big ensemble of characters, and yet you walk out of the theater and you care about those characters. You know what their wants are, their needs, what they're afraid of, their journey, their quest. It's so funny.
You just said it. You said why we care because they showed that.
Yeah.
In the miniseries, they didn't.
It was more of a tell approach.
Yeah, they're like, okay, we're just gonna tell you this happened to us, guys. Let's go kill it. And then like they run or whatever, and it's like no. I mean, even though they did show us in certain parts, it didn't show us enough. It didn't like we didn't care. Like, okay, why is this happening? Why is this bitch not running out of the room? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? But in the new movies, it goes in the more emotional approach. Why? You're laughing at me. I'm genuinely getting upset for no freaking reason right now. Like, I am just like angry that for some reason that the miniseries didn't interpret that because when we were watching the new film, and I mentioned it to you that there was this one part at the very end of the film where I realized why I connected it to it so much.
Was it the scene between? It's at the end of the film where this is end of chapter 2, I believe.
Chapter 2,
where they defeated it. It's dead, and it's a scene between Ben and Beverly where Beverly realizes that Ben is the one who wrote her that letter long ago.
The poem, yeah.
And they have this moment where they're under the water and they kiss each other.
Yeah, because it's like, here's the thing though, like you see these characters from like childhood to adulthood that they ran away from their trauma, but they were still being affected by it subconsciously. They didn't understand why, but it was there. So when they have to go back and face their trauma, face their fears to like fix it, and even though she was like always had this longing for like she thought it was Bill but she didn't know, and then she's like wondering, but Ben never said anything. He was kind of waiting in the back and was like, I'm gonna let you figure this out on your own type of thing. And then so like in that scene where like they're kissing and they jumped into the water and they kind of like it symbolized kind of like a, if you want to go in the religious approach, like cleansing, like a Christianing, like you're being baptized again, like you're being new,
born
like
again.
Trauma, born again, exactly. So are you washing off this trauma or washing off all these fears or whatever? And at that moment, it seemed like Beverly understood herself. She was complete. And that's when Ben and her kiss, because he was like, now I get to enjoy you complete.
They become free.
They become free, and that way they're able to enjoy each other in their freeness. So, like, and I got chills with that because I actually got really teary-eyed at that moment, because I'm pretty sure there's people out there, if you want to, like, really get into the psychological approach to this film, it really talks about, we keep mentioning trauma because it is a very huge part of the film, of how trauma affects you and how trauma will never let you fully be connected to someone or anything for that matter. So when she's able to face those fears and realize that the trauma does not define her and she gets to control it, and by it, I literally mean the clown, it, and her own trauma herself, and being able to complete herself and then find love that way. It's so beautiful, you know? And guess what? That was missing in the miniseries. I was wondering this whole fucking time, like, this bitch, why she just kissed Bill out of nowhere? Like, what the fuck just happened?
That. It's like, what?
It's like, exactly. And I'm like, oh, you got your man, like, even though he was an abusive man or whatever, like, but what just happened? Like, what? like, I don't get it. What? It just, I didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
But in this one, it hit me in such a, like, personal place for, by the way, as a horror movie about a clown, to hit you in that way, it says something about the subject matter of like what Stephen King was probably like what he was trying to say in the book.
For me, that's the beauty of genre filmmaking about horror.
I got emotional. So my chest hurts now because
of horror. It's okay. of horror films, science fiction films, fantasy films, that what they can do is that, yes, indeed, with a story about a killer clown terrorizing children and adults, that you can touch upon the themes of childhood trauma and how it haunts us and how we as adults have never come to terms with that, and we have to go back to our past and to finally confront those demons and wrestle with them, and to the point to where, once successfully done, that we can become free. That, or how it's expressed in the movie, where both Ben and Beverly both kiss, or Richie, who always is there with a joke. He finally breaks down and cries at the loss of Eddie.
Yeah.
Where it's like finally Bill has come to terms with the guilt he felt in regards to Georgie's death. Where it's like they're finally free to be themselves, to be who they are.
And that was missed.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that, again, missed in the miniseries because in the new movies, like, they touched upon each of their own traumas. Like, let's go down the list. Beverly with her abusive father. You know, Bill with the loss of his brother. Mike with, like, at least in the new movie, the loss of his family and him thinking he was responsible for it. Richie...
he is closeted. It turns out that he was closeted.
And they did not show that in the miniseries. Or if they did, I did not catch it.
Well, here's the thing, that in the book, it was more of implied, so fans were thinking, is Richie closeted? But now it's the movie flat out states, no, Richie is closeted, and Richie had feelings for Eddie. Whether Eddie and Richie acted out upon those feelings is never fully revealed.
And I like the fact that they didn't reveal that either, because it's like, but here's the thing though, like, it was implied in the book, but they never implied it in the miniseries that I'm aware of. If it was caught there, you guys let us know in the comment section. But I don't remember it being implied.
Definitely let us know at SOSN Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and leave it a comment on our YouTube channel.
Shameless plug. But yeah, so Richie with that, Ben with feelings of insecurity and inadequacy because of his size when he was younger. Eddie with, like, his overbearing mom. Oh my God. And, like, because feeling that he's always sick and never good enough, that he has to be taken care of, he ends up marrying someone who was exactly like his mom. And Stanley...
Well, except in the miniseries where he's he's a pathetic virgin who his mom is still there overbearing him. And I thought that's kind of, stereotypically silly.
And in the book, and that's the thing, like, in the new movies, I feel that it was a better adaptation of the book. Because in the book, that also did happen, that Eddie ended up marrying someone like his mom. And for them to show that in the miniseries, it's kind of like, that. Why show them that pathetic? Like, I understand showing them, like, in a pathetic way, but there was no point for it. You're just showing him just to be pathetic. Like,
yeah.
Show me the why. Like, show me the why he decided to never really leave his mom.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like, does that mean that he stayed in Maine? Like, because I thought then why did he not remember? Did he move away from Maine with his mom? Like, what happened? Which that's a little weird, like, loophole that they didn't cover well. But anyways.
Yeah.
And then Stanley, when it came to just, there was a beautiful, like, little speech that he did in the end of chapter 2, as a child. Like, it was a flashback when he was in his bar mitzvah, I believe it was, about him, like, what really means to be a man. And he's like, he's always going to be a loser. You know, like, that he knows his place in the world. And so, like, it was kind of interesting, like, of just how he viewed himself as kind of like he was wiser beyond his years than he was shown in the miniseries. So it's like all of these kids kind of like dealing with their own shit and then just coming together as adults and remembering everything. And then realizing, like, oh, we never really worked through this shit. And the only way we're going to be able to get through it is literally killing our trauma.
Yeah.
And, you know?
When you discover that you are bigger than the traumatic events that you've endured, that you're stronger than you think you are, and that if you confront it and you can rip out its heart and destroy that trauma, that you can do so. It's just the unfortunate thing that a lot of folks who deal with the trauma or still endure with trauma, that they don't make those choices. They don't move forward with confronting the trauma. Instead, they run away as far as they can or try to forget it. But it's always there.
Yeah, and that's why I really like movies like this. That, yes, like, if you want to look at it in a nutshell, it's a horror movie about a clown, a killer clown.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really important to have I feel like, if not to get all preachy or anything, but, like, I feel it's really important to have films like that in a nutshell, it's something so, like, what you might think is stupid, but it really touches upon certain things like this to show you that, like, hey, you're not the only one dealing with trauma, and there is a way out.
Yeah.
You know, there's a way. You're not alone, and that's the first thing you need to remember. You are not alone in your trauma. So being able to see that in a film, when essentially is about a killer clown, and I keep mentioning that because I fucking hate clowns with a passion.
Especially killer clowns.
Killer clowns, especially.
And especially those from outer space.
Oh, God, I can't watch that movie. I can't. Like, the first 5 minutes, I can't. Anyways, but to have that kind of emotional impact, I think is important because, like you said, you know, a lot of people deal with shit like that and they don't want to face it. So to be able to see those messages be wrapped around, I don't want to say silly movie, but essentially it could be considered a silly movie about a damn clown.
A horror film.
A horror film, yeah. It's super important, and it's like, it kind of like makes me feel a bit more passionate about the film because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those where it's like you can do a straight drama like when we covered in Magnolia in episode 4 of Something Old, Something New, available in our archives. But it is, for me, I do gravitate more towards those stories that are able to do that through science fiction, fantasy, and horror. That, you know, as Guillermo del Toro put it when he won his Oscar for Shape of Water for Best Picture, that he mentioned the fact that you can use these through science fiction fantasy to be able to tell the stories, to tell what faces us of issues of the past, of the present, to be able to convey our feelings or emotions. That's the beauty of those. So one quick thing, just a couple of quick thoughts, 2 quick thoughts for me on when it comes to it specifically. For It Chapter 1, you know, the scenes with, because the usage of Bill's eyes in the films as Pennywise, but in the scene with Georgie when he's in the storm drain, that it reminds me of how Dario Argento would shoot Suspiria, the first murder sequence with the eyes. It is just as haunting as that. And number 2, I have to mention this is an egregious error. There's a scene in Chapter 2 where in 1989 where they're at the movie theater lobby and they're taking photos of themselves. It's a great scene, and they're passing by the arcades. And one of the arcade cabinets is Mortal Kombat 2. There's no way, not Mortal Kombat 2. Even then, Mortal Kombat 2 would have been wrong, but Mortal Kombat 1.
And Street Fighter 2. So you had the 2 correct. But
was Street Fighter 2 there as well?
Yeah.
I remember Street Fighter, the first one, being there, but not the second one.
Apparently it was Street Fighter 2.
Oh my gosh. That's definitely, it's in there. But when it comes to our thoughts on the miniseries and the 2 movies, the 2 films are far superior than the miniseries. The miniseries does have little moments here and there of good scares, and Tim Curry does a good job. But
he's really good. Yeah. I honestly, again, he's always still gonna. And this is the sad part. I don't want to say sad part, but hear me out. Tim Curry's it is always still going to go down in history as a very iconic clown.
Yeah.
And we spoke about this earlier, that unfortunately Bill Skarsgård is going to be such an underrated actor in performance.
Yeah.
Because we're in this era of just iconic horror icons. Chucky, the guy from Halloween. I keep calling him
Freddy, Michael Myers,
Mike Myers.
Jason.
I keep calling him Mike Myers. Sorry, Shrek. But all those horror icons that I think he's going to get lost within that, and that's so unfair. Because, like you said, Tim Curry, their approaches were completely different, but Bill Skarsgård went above and beyond for this role. The stuff that he did to prepare, and even the physicality of it all. Even though CGI was used, he gave a very physical performance. Even if it was he kind of reminded me of a stage actor, but for film. It's kind of interesting that it's just he paid attention to every part of his body for this role.
Yeah.
And it makes it so effective.
But, I mean, we both agree, though, that the miniseries has a lot of good factors to it, but overall, the two films in 2017, 2019 are better. Not just in terms of because they're R-rated, not just in terms of budgetary reasons, but because of how they were able to take the story and the characters and make you care and be emotionally connected with them as they confront their traumas, or in this case, confront it. So this concludes our episode of Something Old, Something New. Just to let you guys know that next week we are not going to be recording a podcast. We are actually going to go on a little mini vacation to Disneyland.
Oh my God, I'm so excited!
So, but the thing is that we will still have content available. So check out our YouTube account. Check out Instagram and Twitter, SOSN Podcast, for those. When it comes to videos and photos, we're going to provide you quick little updates, and also because at Disneyland, it's where tons of wonderful movies are being made and such. But our next episode, we will be taking a look at Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, 2001: A Space Odyssey, released in 1968. And Ad Astra, released in 2019, starring Brad Pitt, where we're going to look at 50-plus year difference between these two science fiction space movies. How has technology evolved in getting these films made? In regards to the search for life out beyond the moon and the stars that we're familiar with, how have those things changed? But
it's gonna be interesting.
Yep. So as stated, this is Something Old, Something New. This is David.
Salome.
And as we say, bye bye, Georgie.
Stop it!